Hi there and welcome back to my channel. This is Sean, the Honest Book Reviewer. This video is all about mysteries, the top 9 mysteries I read in 2023. These books are all interesting, intriguing, fascinating and engaging. I enjoyed them all very much. I hope you enjoy hearing about them too. Let's start with the first book. The first book is 55, written by James Delargy. It's set in outback Western Australia. It is by an Australian author. I enjoyed this so much. It's such an interesting and gripping concept. So basically what happens is it's set in a small rural outback town, very isolated, and a guy turns up to the police station. He's bloody, he's injured. He says he was abducted, kidnapped by somebody, some guy, and he escaped. And he says he can name the person who kidnapped him. The person told him his name. The police don't keep him in the station. They set him up in a motel room, which I found strange. But then, a few hours later, a second person turns up. Another guy who's injured and bloody, and he has the same story. But he names as his kidnapper the first person who turned up a few hours before. So we have two strangers turn up to the same police station in this isolated outback town. And they both name each other as the kidnapper and attacker. And they both say they're innocent. So who's lying and who's guilty? That's the big mystery in this story. And I have to say that through this book, I changed my mind so many times. I kept saying, this one's guilty. No, this one's guilty. I changed my mind time and time again. The way this is written is just brilliant. It keeps you guessing right to the last moment. You're so sure that one of them's guilty, then you change your mind because he can't be, because something else happens. This other person says something or does something, and they're guilty. I love this story because of that. The setting is so good. You feel like you're immersed in that setting. You feel like you're in outback Australia in this small town. Some of the characters are a bit wishy-washy sometimes, but I think on the whole, the characters are very strong indeed. And the ending is so shocking. The ending doesn't come out of nowhere because it makes sense to the rest of the story, but it's so shocking and so gripping, and it really hits you for 6, this ending. This book is an amazing read. This book deserves more readers. I think this book is just wonderful. The second book I want to mention is Daisy Darker, written by Alice Feeney. This is an amazing mystery. It's about a family getting together to celebrate the 80th birthday of a grandmother. The reason they're getting together is for 2 things. So, the grandmother is sure that once she turns 80, she'll die. A fortune teller told her, so she's sure she hasn't got long to live. And she wants to get her family to dinner because she wants to tell them what they're getting in their inheritance. I've got to say that once she tells them all, so many of them are upset. They thought they were getting so much more and they're not. Soon after dinner, the grandmother is found dead. And on a wall in a room where she's found, there's a poem. Because this grandmother is a children's author, and in her books she writes poems. There's a poem on the wall, and it's about all the members of the family. And the lines about the grandmother are crossed out. So immediately we wonder, is the rest of the family in danger? And who killed the grandmother? The family is trapped. They can't get out of the house. They're cut off by water. And also, no phones work. There's no cell service, and the landline doesn't work. It's being cut off. They're trapped overnight in this big storm with possibly a killer in the house. It's a very, very tense book. So well written. The characters are all very well written. Even though you don't like the characters, they're well written and engaging. The mystery is just spot on in my view. This book is an amazing read. I recommend this so much. The next book I want to mention is Q is for Quarry, written by Sue Grafton. It's no secret that I enjoy this series. It's one of my favourite PI series of all time, and Kizzy Malone is a great character. But it doesn't mean that I enjoy every book in the series as much as each other. Not every book is amazing, but this book is. This book is quite special. It's about a cold case, and I like cold case mysteries. But this cold case just feels more special for some reason. Maybe partly because Sue Grafton based this on a true cold case. Sue Grafton heard about this cold case from the 60s, and some of the only evidence they've got is part of a jawbone. She wondered, how can I make people aware of this crime? How can we get some sort of traction about this crime? Maybe find out who this lady is, who was murdered. so she based a story on it. And then an artist did a sculpture of the woman's face, what they think the woman looked like. And they thought with this sculpture of the face and with Sue Grafton's story, it'd create some publicity and maybe somebody would come forward. Nobody has yet, as far as I know. But just knowing that this story is based on a true cold case is very interesting and intriguing. That's not all about the story that's wonderful. The characters are just amazing in this story, and the mystery is as well. In this book, we have the main character Kinsey working closely with Con Dolan and Stacey Oliphant. Con Dolan we know from previous books in the series, but Stacey Oliphant is a new character for this book, and they're both amazing. Great characters. Their interactions with each other and with Kinsey are just wonderful in this book. I loved everything about this book. The mystery is spot on. The cold case is developed so well. All the characters just blend so well in this story. It's an amazing book in this series. The next book is Dirt Town, written by Hayley Scrivenor. It's set in outback Australia, and I love this book so much. The setting is just so rich, you feel like you're there. The book is about the disappearance of a young girl, and some of the main characters are children her age. And not many authors can capture children so well in stories, I think, but this author has captured two child characters brilliantly. They both feel so real and genuine. You get engaged with the characters, you're right behind them, Ronnie especially. When you read this book, I'm sure you'll find Ronnie an amazing character. She's brilliant. I'm sure that you'll also wonder about her fascination with llamas. She's just fascinated with llamas, and I learnt more about llamas than I think I've learnt anywhere else. I enjoy so much about this book. The mystery is so good. The setting is brilliant. There are a few flaws in the story. One flaw is there's a collective we voice. So there are some chapters where it's about this collective voice about, I guess, the whole town or about society in general. I'm not sure. It's like the royal we, collective we. I didn't like those chapters in the book. Just felt a bit off to me, a bit strange. Felt a bit pretentious, actually. I think take those chapters out, and the book would be better because those chapters are distracting. There's no reason for this collective voice to be there. Takes away from the mystery, I think. Pulls you out of the mystery. Did to me anyway. But the mystery itself, the characters, the setting are all so well done. You feel like you're in outback Australia in this small town that's struggling. But this small town's on its knees, and the author really gives you that whole impression in the story. You just feel so much for the characters and the town as well in this book. The next book I want to mention is All That's Left Unsaid, written by Tracey, Lien. It's an Australian book, mostly set in Sydney, in a Vietnamese community. I like this story a lot. It's contemporary mystery. It's about this woman, I think in her mid or late 20s, and her brother is murdered in Sydney. So she travels back from Melbourne to Sydney to kind of just help her parents get through at the start. Then she gets kind of caught up in the mystery. She wants to know who actually was the culprit, who's responsible for her brother's death. So she goes around and starts talking to people in her community, in the Vietnamese community. And through their voices, we just learn about prejudices in the community. We learn about how they think about their new home of Australia, even though some of them have been there for decades. How they think about Australia and how they carry from Vietnam, when they came across to Australia, they carry trauma from their old home. When they were forced to leave Vietnam because of the war, they carry all this trauma and they carry all this grief. They carry all these things with them still in Australia decades later. You learn all about that in this story. And I found that quite special. It opens your eyes to this whole community in Australia. It opens your eyes to what they're thinking decades later. Even how it affects generations later on in Australia as well. I found this fascinating story. I found the mystery very good. The characters are amazing. The setting is amazing as well. It's a book that just makes you think. A book that drags you into a story but also makes you think because it makes you question what you think you know about the Vietnamese community in Australia already. I think if you like general mysteries, you don't have to like contemporary mysteries to enjoy this story. But if you like general mysteries, give this a go. It's very unique. I don't think you'll find many mysteries that center around the Vietnamese community as much as this story. A great story. I like this very much. The next is Everyone in My Family Has Killed Someone, written by Benjamin Stevenson. I didn't know what to expect from this book. It's written by a stand-up comedian. And not every book written by a stand-up comedian is going to be great. We know it's not. But this book is wonderful. It's set in a small footprint, so it's set in a ski resort, and they're cut off. And it's about a family getting together for like a reunion because one of the family members is being released from prison. But when they all get together, they're cut off in this snowstorm and somebody's found dead. Then later on, somebody else is found dead. So it's almost like this classic murder mystery when you've got people in the same family and some strangers as well, just cut off in a small environment, and you're wondering who the culprit is. What's more interesting is that so many people could be the culprit because they've all got secrets, and it makes you wonder that everybody at some stage may have killed somebody at some point in their lives as well. All these things come out about these family members. None of them are truly innocent, but some of them are a bit wacky, very quirky, some more than others. Just makes for interesting reading. What I like about this story as well, it uses classic mystery elements, not modern elements. So we haven't got these modern tropes a lot of books have now. It goes back to the old days, classic elements in a story. And there's clues in the story that make sense. It even tells you early on about certain clues to look out for, which is very interesting, I think. But the clues make sense. Everything makes sense in the story. There's no twist and turn to come out of nowhere with things that come out of nowhere for no reason, red herrings that don't make sense. None of that happens in this book. It's all classic murder mystery type elements in the story, and I really enjoyed that. I found it quite refreshing and fascinating, and I think this book is just wonderful. It's one of my favourite books of the year. The next book I want to mention is The Women of Baker Street, written by Michelle Birkby. It's the second book in the Baker Street Inquiries mystery series. I like this book because of the concept and the characters. So, the two protagonists are Mrs. Hudson, who's the landlady of Sherlock Holmes, and Mary Watson, who's the wife of Dr. Watson. Those two characters are amazing in this book. I read this series originally because I was wondering how the author would bring these two characters to life. These two characters that aren't given much life in the original Sherlock Holmes series. They're just wonderful characters, and even the mystery in this book is better than book one. The characters shine more in this book as well. I loved everything about this book. It even features other characters from the Sherlock Holmes original series, and those characters are given more life in this book as well. It's very clever. It's set in historical times, and also what's interesting in this book is that the two main characters use the attitudes of the times to their advantage. So in the historic times that it's set in, women aren't thought of as being intelligent or clever or capable. They're thought of as being weak-minded and weak-willed, and that they don't have jobs, that they're not worth anything basically. These two characters use those attitudes to their advantage, and they just move around the city and almost invisible to a lot of people in the city, but they get things done and solve crimes. I find that very fascinating. The characters in this story are just amazing. I want more books in this series. I'm hoping the author gets to write more books in this series. The two books were given life in America, I think, a year or so ago. I'm hoping that means the series gets more legs, because I think this series deserves more books. The next book I want to mention is Wake, written by Shelley Burr. It's another Australian mystery, cold case mystery that's set in outback Australia, in a small community, a small town. I like this book so much. The characters are brilliant. Every character in this book is amazing. And the mystery is so well thought out and planned. It just seems so well constructed. There's no waste in this story. Everything makes sense, and everything just peels back just so brilliantly. I think the author has so much control in this story. I just loved everything about this book. One of the main characters is interesting because he brings with him a mystery about his own life. So it adds another mystery to this story. And that character he was in the police academy. He left the academy and became a PI. And he specialises in cold cases, and he comes to solve this case. He wants to solve it because there's a reward of $1 million, and he wants that money. But he brings with him all this baggage and all these things about his past, and he thinks something linked in his past may be linked into this cold case. And the cold case is about disappearance of a girl 19 years ago, and the girl's sister still lives in the same house as they did when they were children. And this guy, this PI guy, tries to encourage this woman who's still living in the area to be interested and be open about this cold case and get involved. And this community doesn't want this guy investigating. There's prejudice against the guy because of that, but there's conflict as well. There's characters who have secrets, they come out as well. There's so many things going on in this story, but it all feels real. It all plays out so organically. There's nothing forced in this story. I like everything about this book. I think it's a wonderful story. One of my favourite books that I read in the year. I really encourage people to read this. I also want to mention The House Across the Lake, written by Riley Sager. This book is more a mystery to me than a thriller. I like this book very much. There are many tropes in this story. So we have unreliable narrator. We have woman going missing in the middle of the night. We have untrustworthy neighbour. We have somebody watching across a distance with binoculars and then somebody watching them. So familiar tropes in this book, but they're all used and written very well, and they all feel fresh because they're written so well. But the whole mystery drew me in, and the things that happened before the mystery just hooked me. That basically the main character is living in a lake house. She's there and she has a bit of a drinking problem, but she still manages to get someone to buy a drink for her. But she's watching across binoculars across the houses in this lake. And through binoculars she sees somebody in trouble in the lake and goes and rescues them. It becomes friends with this woman, and she finds out this woman lives across the lake in a house across the lake with her husband. From that moment on, our protagonist is watching that couple with binoculars. They know she's watching them, they don't seem to care, but something happens suddenly. The woman she rescued and became friends with goes missing, and our protagonist is sure that her husband is responsible, that there's foul play. It's interesting the way this plays out. And later on in the book, other elements come into the story that some people don't really enjoy. I didn't mind it so much because it was written very well. It was surprising because I didn't expect it, and I won't say what those elements are, but it just seems like a bit out of left field sometimes in this book. But anyway, the book overall is well written, it's clever. Even though there's tropes, it feels fresh. Even though sometimes characters feel like other characters in other stories, they feel unique and fresh enough in this story. I really enjoyed it. I enjoyed so much about this story. It was one of the first books from Riley Sager that I read, but I've read so many of his books now, and this book is one of my favourites. There you have the top 9 mysteries that I've read in 2023. Each of these books I found engaging, intriguing, and just fascinating for different reasons, but I think they're all great mysteries, and I think everybody who likes mysteries should read them. On my channel, I review many mysteries. If you enjoy mysteries, check out my channel and subscribe. On the screen now is a link to another video for a book I'm sure you'll enjoy.